parents will be really worried. They're working at home. Probably their partner might be working at home as well if they're all office-based staff. They're going to have the kids in the house as well. How are they going to juggle all that? So a lot of that is having those open conversations with the managers, and for the managers being understanding and having that trust. Now, it might mean that parents have to work more in the evening rather than in the daytime. Certainly if they've got little kids, that's going to be a big issue. So it's like managers have to relax and just look at getting the tasks done rather than how and when they're done. And that's a big thing about flexible work and smart working anyway. It's about outcomes rather than, inputs and outputs.
This is the Ideas Lab podcast, where you can learn from great creative and entrepreneurial minds how to turn your ideas into original businesses, books, and brands. Because in a crowded world, it pays to stand out. This is your host, John Williams, best-selling author and founder of the Ideas Lab London. Right now, the coronavirus has brought about a massive shift in the way we work for millions and millions of people around the world. That's because many companies have sent their employees home to continue doing their jobs. And so we are seeing a rather remarkable social experiment taking place. My client, Nicole Carter, is the UK expert on smart working. That's everything involved in remote working, flexible working, technology, processes and procedures that allow people to work productively from home while staying connected to the company that they work for. Whether you're a manager, finding yourself with a team that's working remotely, or whether you yourself are working at home and dealing with some of those challenges, I think you're going to find this really interesting. Welcome, Nicole. Really glad you could make it on the Ideas Lab podcast. How are you doing?
Very well, John, in these very interesting times.
Yes, indeed, they are. And I'm so glad we could get you on at short notice. Of course, we know each other because you're on my programs called Escape Velocity to help raise your profile, because you have all this amazing expertise that is very relevant right now, which is about smart working, as you call it. And can you first of all explain what you mean by smart working?
Well, we've seen flexible working being around for quite a while, and some companies have embraced that really well and some haven't. So that's sort of been on a very sort of slow and steady journey. And then in some organizations, they've started looking at it in the sort of bigger realm, really, as calling it smart working, because they're taking into account furniture and offices and co-working spaces and all these sort of things. So that's sort of how this journey for organizations has been going. But what we've seen, obviously, with the situation we're in now is that's sped up really quickly and sort of in an unprecedented way. And people are now being asked to go and work from their homes. And they're not maybe ready for it, and companies haven't had the strategy and all the discussions that they might have had. So it's how to sort of support them, really.
And you recently gave a keynote speak at a big conference that was all about smart working, remote working, and so on. And as you say, there is a massive potential. People had a lot of interest in this before the coronavirus pandemic, because there's enormous potential for saving money, primarily for companies. Because if you don't have to have a desk for everybody, you save an enormous amount of money. I mean, is that the primary driver, or is there more than that? Before we get into our current situation?
Yeah, there is more than that. I mean, that is definitely a big driver. Saving money is important for most organisations, and whether it's public sector or private sector. But I think that some of the other drivers are for retaining and attracting good staff, really. I mean, the world is changing, and other people can see other organisations doing this quite well. You've got sort of younger generations coming through the workforce, and they're much more sort of digital savvy and things like that, and they're not really expecting to be 9 till 5 sitting at a desk day after day. So it's just the world is changing, really, and companies are catching up.
That's a really good point. I met people in Thailand and Bali, and they work for big corporations, but they work remotely, and they wouldn't be there. And they're very, really bright people. They wouldn't be there if they didn't have that flexibility. For me, there's no way I would ever go back and work in a company 9 to 5, 5 days a week. I'd rather do just about anything than do that. So for some people, that's really critical. But when people start to, now everyone's suddenly being forced into the situation where they've got to send their staff home. And I'm seeing all my friends who are solicitors and stuff like that, and a whole variety of jobs being sent to work home. That brings up a whole bunch of issues, doesn't it? Because there's been a resistance in companies to allowing remote working and flexible working. And that's one of the things you consult on. I guess, but what's held people back until now? Are they worried that people are just going to skive off if they go home?
Yeah, I think there's been a few things. First, some of it's been health and safety. It's always been like, have their employees got, proper desks set up and, those sort of ergonomic workstations and things like that set up at home, which I always think that shouldn't really be an issue, because people can set themselves up in their own way. And also you can move around a bit more if you're at home and things as well. But the other thing is about productivity. Some organizations have got that sort of culture where they're worried about productivity and they don't really maybe trust their employees to deliver the things that they should be doing. Or even just individual managers have got that. So you might see an organization that is quite open to this sort of flexibility of work and the sort of smart working way of life, but maybe sort of different managers maybe don't feel that their teams are working unless their teams have got all their bums sitting on the seats. So it's very sort of different and fluid. But what we have seen now is that these sort of managers haven't got a choice now. So their staff are going to be scattered to the four winds for the foreseeable future. So it'll be quite interesting to see how that pans out. And also there's ways that we can help those managers get over that fear, really. They've got a fear of whether their team are going to deliver the things that they need to do.
So is that not true? Is that fear unjustified? And what should they do in order to make sure that they can feel comfortable about sending their staff home?
I think there's some things. First of all, they've got to relax. Basically, I mean, in a way, this is like been enforced on them. So all the rules are out really. So they can look at it from a blank piece of paper really and start again building those rules up. So some of the things are having clear deliverables for the team and for the individuals in the team. It's not a question of just them sitting there for 7 hours and they've done their work. We know that offices aren't very productive places anyway. They're only 60% productivity because people have chat and get distractions and go and make a coffee and have a wander about. So all these things happen in the workplace anyway. So that's going to happen at home. But what we have seen is that people are more productive at home because they sort of have that urge and they want to deliver because they've not got those distractions as well. They might have different distractions, but we can come on to that. So they're actually.
So you're seeing that productivity goes up quite often.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. But productivity. What is productivity? So that's a big issue. In the old days, in Industrial Revolution, people were producing widgets and things. You could see what the productivity was. But for a long time now, those sort of tangibles of productivity don't really exist. So it's up to managers and to teams to decide what is productive, and it's like having deliverables and having milestones that people can check in. And so some of the things that managers can do is set up proper communication. That's really key. So whether you use some of these digital tools that are available, channels, and whether it's Slack or Asana or Trello or all these digital channels that are sort of quite easy and intuitive to use, or the organisations themselves might have these sort of things set up. But managers can use them to open up these channels of communication with their teams and get people to check in. So it might be that you have a daily sort of, it's called a stand-up or a huddle, where people get together and just sort of say the things that they're going to do that day. And then the next day, they tell people how they got on the day before, what things they're going to do the day that they're in there, and what, and whether they've had any blockers or problems. So it's opening up all those channels of communication and getting people to just sort of work out loud. I mean, there's a whole topic about that in itself, but it's getting people to be open and share what they're doing, which will be hard for some people, but that does get over the fear thing, enables trust amongst the whole team and certainly with the managers, and lifts that productivity.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you were saying when we were chatting earlier that trusting your employees tends to pay off in terms of productivity. Is that right?
Yeah. So some of the things that might happen, certainly, I mean, I myself, my kids are going to finish today at lunchtime, like children all over the country. And parents will be really worried. They're working at home. Probably their partner might be working at home as well. If they're all office-based staff, they're going to have the kids in the house as well. How are they going to juggle all that? So a lot of that is having those open conversations with the managers, and for the managers being understanding and having that trust. Now, it might mean that parents have to work more in the evening rather than in the daytime. Certainly if they've got little kids, that's going to be a big issue. So it's like managers have to relax and just look at getting the tasks done rather than how and when they're done. And that's going to be, that's a big thing about flexible work and smart working anyway. It's about outcomes rather than, inputs and outputs. So.
And that's really interesting. And I remember when I was invited to move to Montreal and work for a software company up there, but had just been sold by Microsoft to the company I work for. And the deal was it was 24-hour access. You could go into the building. It's an incredibly cool building. And you could go in at any time, and there was no clocking in and clocking out. And some developers just worked in the middle of the night, and that's all. And, now probably a lot more of them will work at home. And if you're motivated, you'll do it. So, and it sounds a little bit from what you're saying that if you sort of suspect everyone's going to just mess around and cheat you, it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you set up an environment and a tone where everyone it all feels very piecemeal or something. I don't know quite how to describe it.
Yeah, or you might get that sort of adversarial thing. You're trying to get away with it because you're not being trusted. So therefore, you're not going to deliver that trust. I mean, I think that what's important is that not everybody can work like in the night. You can't just say to people, well, you can work in the night. It's fine for some situations, but not others. So it might be that you have to have some rules, and this is what teams I think should do, and managers should lead that, is set up what are the rules for the teams. Because you want to mitigate any bad feeling or issues amongst the team members themselves, or that person wasn't online for half an hour because I saw that their Skype presence wasn't like, all these sort of things, so they must have been not working, but so you need to have maybe a team charter. One of my clients, she's set up a team charter in her organization, which is quite good, so they can, they decide as a team what the rules are. If someone wants to go and put the washing out, or has got to go and deal with a small child, then that's fine, but they need to decide that as a team, what the rules are. And then that gives everybody that sort of confidence and just helps with the general well-being as well. This is the way that we're going to work.
I think that's nice. And I think what I'm noticing, the people who, and the tone I'm trying to adopt as well, the people who are winning right now and sort of, if anything, raising their profile and becoming more important to people are the people who are being generous, making an authentic connection, just giving themselves, in my case, it's often entrepreneurs and experts giving their time for free. In this case, it's almost like employers saying, look, I just trust you, and what can we do to help you? And that kind of, coming from that kind of place seems to be, because everyone's scared at the moment. And I think the other thing is, is it a company's role to perhaps address that and to manage people's mental health? Because I know everyone's going ups and downs. Some people are kind of freaking out today, and then I know as my mood goes up and down. For instance, so I was really worried yesterday morning, and then there was the news about treatments, and suddenly my mood completely lifted. And today it's good, but who knows tomorrow? But unfortunately, everyone's not in sync either. So I'm seeing it with my friends, and it must be happening with employees as well.
It is definitely. It's about relaxing those rules and being kind, basically, and just understanding, because everybody's got a low level of anxiety, and then that just, like you say, peaks and troughs depending on what's going on in the day. But businesses will be doing that as well on like an organizational level, depending on how they're cited. So if you can just take away some of that from the employees and lift the whole organization, and just work out what actually needs to be achieved, and work out the best and easiest way to everybody to achieve that.
I like that you mentioned briefly earlier on the idea of a daily stand-up. For people who don't know this, and perhaps I should be doing this actually, because now I'm working with Ben, and we've also just taken someone on remotely. How does a daily stand-up work?
Well, it might be you pick a time that's suitable for people. So, it might be 10 o'clock, you might decide an afternoon one, and then you decide how you're going to do that. So whether that's a conference call, whether that's a video call. I mean, that's one of the things about videos. There's lots of people are maybe a bit nervous about using video because they've not done that before. We're on a video call just now, and it's quite alien for people. They might find be a bit self-conscious or something like that. But I mean, a video call for stand-up is really good because you check in with everybody, you see your colleagues. You can make it a bit funny. You can have 5 minutes at the beginning where you're just chatting about what's going on. You might have that thing where don't worry if the cat starts walking on the keyboard or the kids are running past in the background. You just have to be open with this. This is the reality that we're in just now. But have that call and try and it's all. Video is best, if you can do it, and if the bandwidths are standing up to it, which they seem to be doing just now. But have that stand up. So it might just be 15 minutes where you just all sort of say what you're doing that day, what your focus is for that day, whether you've had any blockers on the work that you were trying to get on yesterday, and just have that sort of chat about where you are in your work and how maybe top and tail it with how you're feeling and what else is going on. It's the same as that chat that you would have had at the desk, but just virtually, but with probably a bit more of a work focus than you might have had when you were in the office, because it's just being more open about what work you're doing so that everybody knows where things are, where tasks are, and knows that they're getting completed. So you might have that, as I said, like 10 o'clock every morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever suits the team.
I think that's a really good idea. And of course, it's called a stand-up because when you're in person, traditionally, this came from agile methods, didn't it? And stuff like that, project management approach. And they would literally stand up. And I know a lot of buildings now, a lot of corporate spaces with shared desk space, they have stand-up meeting areas and everyone just gets around a table. And the point in standing up is you don't want to stay there too long.
Yeah,
as soon as people sit down, they start kind of, going into relaxation mode.
Yeah, and it just lasts longer, doesn't it? So the idea is it's a quick, sharp meeting, just get the points over and then everyone goes on their way, which is really good. And I mean, that's probably one of the benefits that's going to come out of this is less meetings in general, really, more focused meetings. And it might be that you don't have so many big group meetings apart from maybe that huddle, but you might have more one-to-one meetings. And that's something that managers should be helping their staff with, is that, don't feel if you want to Skype someone to just ask them a quick question, or in the afternoon just have a quick video chat with one of your colleagues, then do that. That's perfectly useful and advisable to do. Just have that connection, have a chat, talk about your piece of work, end the call and go on. You don't have to wait until the daily stand-up to have discussions with your colleagues. You can just be doing that on and off throughout the day. Yeah, and often if you've been used to emailing people, and don't email things that are super, super complex that you can resolve in a 2-minute call or a 5-minute video call. Yeah.
And you talked about call tools earlier, and I think you mentioned Slack and Asana and something else. Just want to give us a sentence or two about what those are for anyone who doesn't know?
But they're all sort of real-time communication tools. So they're sort of like, they have things like instant messaging built in, same as sort of Skype and Microsoft Teams. Lots of organizations are rolling out Microsoft Teams as part of their Office 365 sort of rollout. Certainly big corporations are, and they're all sort of similar things. Slack and Asana and Trello, they've all got sort of free versions really, and then paid for versions, and they all do similar things. So it's really, they've all got pros and cons, but they're all quite nice tools to work with. So you might have a project space, or you might have sort of instant chat as well. So it takes some of the pressure off of email, and everybody can see the whole chat. So if you do end up having a day off, or you can come back in and pick up and see where the team is with the project chat, for example, if they're talking about a particular project. So they can be quite useful. They need and maybe if you've just sent all your team out to work from home, you maybe wait for the dust to settle a little bit, and then maybe introduce that in a couple of weeks or something. If you've not got something that your organisation has already supplied. But the only thing is you have to be careful about what you share on these things, like you do with everything, because you have to have a look at compliance for data protection and things like that as well, to make sure that any tool that you choose is secure, depending on what you're sharing.
And I think these are a great way of creating communities. We use Slack between me and Ben, my assistant, and what I like about Slack is like an instant messaging tool. It's pretty much like Facebook Messenger or whatever, but it's just designed as a corporate tool. And Asana and Trello have more project management stuff in it where you can put tasks and so on, but there's also chat around it. And a nice thing, what I find difficult about about emails, or if I'm trying to communicate something complex, I feel in an email I have to put everything in it and then hit send, because there's no elegant way of just adding to an email. You hit reply and then it all becomes a big mess. And so I like Slack because if I suddenly remember something, I can tell Ben, oh, don't forget, we're going to need a podcast next week with whoever it is. And I don't have to put all the information in immediately. He can then come back and go, okay, just give me the email or whatever. And I do that. And then, so it feels like everything's moving along and not waiting for the email. Feels too, sometimes like,
isn't it really?
Not granular enough. And if you do have a fast exchange, if you've ever worked on something like a developer or something, you're going through multiple iterations, email quickly becomes an absolute nightmare because you get left with this trail of 25 emails in your inbox. Read this. And then you've got to work out which ones you're still supposed to be reading and which ones you've already dealt with. So Slack has an advantage over that. But I guess it even needs, I like that tip of don't immediately send everyone home and tell them to install Slack for the first time, because they've got to adjust to being at home and all the stuff around that. Skype or Zoom might be a big enough jump for them. But to then say, because what you'll end up with is some of them will be on Slack and then some won't have installed it yet. And now half the people are missing the conversation, I guess.
Yeah, that is. And so you want to be inclusive in that as well. So if you end up having a Skype conversation and helping someone set something up, and then that's quite useful as well, because you want to keep everybody included. But you're right. Slack and things like that are much more conversational, really, and much more intuitive in how humans really interact. The other thing that you can do with these tools is you could have one that's set up for just general chat, So I've seen quite a few set up just in the last few days, and if you're working at home, you're usually quite things are quite quiet and you're just working away. And I have to turn the notifications off because there was so much stuff coming on all the time in these different channels, because people are just chatting about working from home and what it's like, and and so you can have that as well. There's so much socializing going on as well online now. It's quite nice,
Yeah, and it's important to continue that sort of water cooler chat. So we have in Slack, for instance, there are topics of conversation and all the different projects going on. In the Ideas Lab has a different channel, but there's also one called Random, where Ben and I send each other sort of memes and funny articles and stuff like that. And I remember seeing somebody who ran a company that did moderation of online communities with real humans. And she had to have, she had probably hundreds of women working for her, at least dozens, all around the world, and they all work from home. And in order that they could feel, they're all women for some reason, it just panned out that way. And she was a female entrepreneur. And it suited them working around kids, I guess, the ones who were mums. And what they did was they had a channel that was basically just for cat photos, because they were so keen on cat photos. I mean, for me, it would be dog pictures, but I'd be very happy to join any dog Slack channel that was going, even though I'm not a dog owner. I just think dogs are cute.
All the emails start coming in now.
Yeah, I know. Join our Slack channel. So, you can add that stuff in. And I think she did a brilliant job in creating something that felt like a real community, despite the fact that these people actually never met each other. I think that's great.
It is great, and it opens up, different. They're just different ways of working, and they can be really good. They're just as valid as working in offices were. I think things just changed. I think things will be changed forevermore after this as well.
So, should we just give a couple of tips before we finish for people who are working from home?
Yeah.
On how to manage things like, setting yourself up and managing children being around you and stuff like that?
Yeah, so say first of all, if you're starting, might be starting working at home this week or next week, try and find yourself a workspace. It might not be ideal, it might just be a tiny bit of space, but try and find something that you can designate as your workspace, even if it means that you've just got a box where you put all your work things in and you take them out in the day and put them away when you've finished work. Just try and eke yourself out a bit of space that you can work and make yourself as comfortable as you can. If you're going to have kids at home, I would say, it depends on the age of your kids. If they're really tiny, all you can do is like work when they're napping, if they do that. Or if you've got a partner as well, maybe do tag teams and one of you works in the morning and one works in the afternoon, and then you catch up in the evening. It'll be hard, but you can only do what you can do, If you've got bigger kids, some kids might sit down for a couple of hours and watch a film, If they're bigger still, I'm sure they'll game for as long as you can let them. But some of the things you can do is maybe have like a traffic light system. So you've got something on the door that's like red when you're really busy, like in conference call or something. Amber when they can maybe come in and speak to you if it's really important, and then green when you're okay and you're open to chat. And remember that when you're in the office, you would have had those sort of water cooling moments, or when you go and chat with people, you can still do that. It'd just be with your kids, and that's a really nice thing. And it's like for a lot of people, that'll be a perk of working from home, I think. Yeah, it is. It's just in a way we should see it as it's some aspects that will be really good, I think. Communication, so keeping that communication up. Now that's with your work colleagues, and we've already spoken about that, but it's also with your family. So I spoke about how you're going to deal with that with your children, but maybe also with your partner as well. Work out when you're working, when you're not working, and just sort of get some ground rules together at this sort of early stage that's going to sort of carry you through. Have that community. Now, whether that's with your work colleagues, and whether it's setting up channels or having daily stand-ups or however you do that, but also you've got the community around you. So make sure that you get out and go for a walk and have regular breaks and things when you're working from home. You might see a neighbour, you might not be able to hug them in the same way as you used to, but you can still sort of wave at people and see people, go out and go and get some fresh air and have a bit of a break. Sort your tech out, so this sort of links to your workstation as well. Now, a lot of people I know, when there's Skype calling and things, they don't have headphones, so try and find some headphones. So you might not have the most expensive noise cancelling headphones that money can buy, but just try and get something. So even if it is the headphones that you use for your mobile phone, if it's got a microphone, all the better, because there's nothing worse than trying to listen to a Skype call or people trying to listen to you while you've got all the noise going on in the background. So try and get some sort of technical help. If your company can help by providing something with that, well, then ask them, because that's quite important, I think, and that makes you more confident, because then you can hear the things that are happening in any calls and video conferences that you're having. And then there's just sort of two more points. So one is maybe decide how you work. So you might not really be a 9 to 5 person. You might work better in the morning, better in the evening. So work your working day around how you work, and obviously have those open discussions with your manager. And we've already spoken about that. But when are you most productive in work? As I said before, all the rules are off, so you can recreate your working day. And just as long as the tasks are done and you deliver the things that are required, then that should be fine. And then the last thing is look after yourself. I said about having breaks. Make sure you eat something. Make sure you don't work too long hours, because you can do that. I know that a lot of people that work from home, they might log on early. I don't know if you do this, John, but you log on sort of at 8. You might log off at 10 at night, but you don't work all those hours. You do a bit, you go away, come back. So you do that. So work out or decide how you work, and then fit everything around that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good tip. Yeah, that's really useful, Nicole. So lots of good information there for people who are running companies, sending their teams home, but also for people who are working at home. And I think, it's going to be an adjustment period. So be forgiving of yourself and of your staff. It's kind of note to self as well. I'm not really adjusting that much because I work at home mostly anyway, but everything's so up in the air, but there's still a sort of adjustment period of just getting your head around where the world is right now.
But I mean, your situation would have changed as well, because you can't go and work in your local coffee shop in the same way that you would have done, or just go for wander down the street and do the same things that you would have done, or go to the gym and things. Things change for everybody, really. So it's just, cutting yourself some slack, really, and relaxing into it.
Yes. Yeah, that's be kind, you said earlier. And I think that's a really good tip. So that's really good. And we're working we're halfway through a year-long program together, my Escape Velocity program, to help you get your message out there. So this has been a good experiment, I think, that shows that you really know what you're talking about, Nicole, which I always suspected.
Good.
And there's a reason why she's known as, I call her the UK's, remote working expert. I know you're a little bit shy about calling yourself such things, but don't worry. Don't disagree with me. I know what I'm talking about. And you can find out more about Nicole. LinkedIn is probably still the best place to go, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So where do we find you on LinkedIn?
So I'm Nicole-Carter UK.
Okay, so if we go to LinkedIn, if you just search for Nicole Carter, then we'll be able to find you. And I think also I've twisted your arm to start doing some LinkedIn lives fairly soon, where you can do some more in-depth Q&A. People will be able to turn up and go, what do I do with my staff, or how am I going to cope with working from home, from whichever side. You're up for that, aren't you?
Yeah, so I certainly am. And if anybody wants to post or connect to me in LinkedIn and send me any questions, then I'll be happy to answer them and come back to people, either LinkedIn Live or directly. Yeah,
no, that's a great idea. So just connect with Nicole Carter on LinkedIn and start doing that. So thanks very much, Nicole. I really appreciate that. It's been great.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ideas Lab podcast. Please do subscribe, and if you've enjoyed this episode, it would be great if you could leave us a review. You can get links and details of everything mentioned in the podcast in the show notes, along with photos and video clips from many of our episodes. Just go to theideaslab.org/podcast.